Hello everyone. So Apple's Spring Loaded event came and went, and loaded it was. We had 3 major product releases and a couple of refreshes. Overall, a great event. And now that it's over, I think we need to look a little bit more in detail to all of the products they've announced. For those of you that are new here, my name's Andrei. I'm a tech enthusiast. I do tech videos. If that's something you guys would be interested in, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of my content. Now, with the silly self-promotion out of the way, let's cue the intro and let's take a look at the event. So before we get into the products launched at the event, we need to talk about the event itself. Amazing. I mean, Apple really has this whole cinematography thing down pat. I mean, it's if there were Oscars for this kind of events, Apple would run away with it. Seriously now. Who guessed that having money helps? I mean, if you have a company that's selling goods for 100 billion plus a quarter and your company's worth 2 trillion, you can afford stuff like that. Nice. What can I say? So I won't cover the event in extreme detail, go over every product in great detail. It would be uninteresting. There's tons of material out there. I suggest you watch the presentation if you haven't watched it already. Apple has it up on their YouTube channel and it's absolutely fantastic. I'll just give you my opinions and impressions of the products launched and what I think of them. Basically, would I purchase them? Do I think they're good value? That sort of stuff. So let's get into it with the first one, the 24-inch iMac. So I'm just gonna describe it in one sentence, and it's gonna be like they took an M1 Mac Mini, stuffed it at the bottom of a 24-inch 4.5K display, and called it a day. Because that's pretty much it. It's accurate to a certain extent. Oh, and they gave it some pretty nice colors on the outside, harkening back to the colorful iMacs launched all those years ago. I like it, actually. I'm not gonna lie. The colors make it look amazing. I like the fact that it's very, very thin, and this is an achievement in of itself. It's like 11.5 millimeters. That's mind-blowing. Marques Brownlee found this out first. They had to move the headphone jack from the back of the Mac to the side because the jack itself was longer than the thickness of the device. But I disliked that front. And this is where I'm pretty much in agreement with every single tech tuber out there, with every single tech magazine or every article that I've read about it. Everybody is kind of in agreement. That chin doesn't belong there. I mean, technically, it's an achievement in of itself because if you think about it and you look at the schematics that Apple presented, that's where the entire computer resides. So every single component is within that tiny bar at the bottom of the display. So you have the M1 SoC in there, you have the cooling, you have the speakers, and there's six speakers, I believe. So this is a technical achievement that's pretty amazing in of itself. Small comment here. Apple really bashed Intel a lot during this presentation. Like, I don't see their relationship getting mended anytime soon. They compared the two and they showed just how inefficient, basically how trash the previous gen hardware was in comparison to the M1.
For comparison, let's take a look at the previous iMac. The logic board and thermals were huge because of the power-hungry processor. And the CPU, GPU, and other components were all separate chips in the system. Now, with the system-on-a-chip architecture of M1, these are all consolidated into this much smaller logic board. And because M1 is far more power efficient, the bulky thermal system is replaced by just 2 small fans. This keeps the system cool while running exceptionally quiet.
I think they're actually correct about it. And the degree of miniaturization that they can achieve with the M1 is basically unparalleled. To even consider the fact that the M1 now gives you a lot more performance, that's a big bonus. But I still don't like the chin. I don't think anybody would have been bothered if instead of 11 millimeters thick, they would have just made it like 20 or 25, whatever, just to fit the entire computer components behind the screen itself, and that would have been fine. It's nitpicking, okay? Because let's remember that not all of us are tech enthusiasts, okay? I'm an enthusiast. You're probably an enthusiast for watching this channel, this content, or other content such as it. But people in general don't care that much. Like the last time I remember all of the tech tubers and everybody in the tech world basically bashing an Apple product and panning it before release, that happened with the iPhone XR. You recall that? I mean, everybody seemed to think that, oh, this is a terrible phone, has a horrible screen, it has no place on a phone that's $700, so on, yada, yada, yada. And then the iPhone XR proceeded to be the most sold phone that year, and it sold in the tens of millions. It's even selling now, like think 3 years after release or something like that, in the millions. So guess what? Users don't care about that too much. They're just happy to pick up a good product. And I think the iMac, the 24-inch iMac, is definitely a good product. Let's also take a quick look at the pricing. So there's three pricing tiers: the $1,300, the base version, the $1,500 mid-range one, and the $1,700 one, which has some extra storage and stuff like that. I would say I'm going to be a bit controversial here, whereas usually I would recommend people to buy products that are lower end in the spectrum. Here I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to say the best value I think is the $1,500 one. And hear me out. The M1 is non-upgradable. In the past, you could have upgraded. Some certain models allowed you to swap out the RAM and the SSD and stuff. That's not possible with the M1, okay? I know some people hacked an M1 MacBook a while back and they were able to add 16 gigabyte memory instead of the base 8, but no, that's not how it's going to happen. Apple will probably limit you from doing that sort of hacking via software or something. So the main point here is this device is going to be non-upgradable. You need to take that into account. And the tech world has been borrowing a lot from the automotive industry, if you think about it, in the past few years. So they come up with a product, and that's the product that you're probably going to want, and that's the mainstream thing that they're going to sell. Then they add some additional features on top to make it even more expensive and high-end, but those are all nice to have features that bring added value to the product itself. And then they also take this product that they've designed and hack stuff off and then sell it for less, basically a poverty spec, if you will. Now the $1,300 iMac here does away with a bunch of stuff that I think you shouldn't really do away with. First of all, you only get, in the base model, you get the 7-core GPU instead of the 8-core GPU. Now, this decision kind of makes sense in a MacBook Air, for instance, which does not have active cooling, but the iMac has active cooling. I mean, you're better off getting the beefier GPU from the get-go, the full fat one, rather than the light version, let's say. You also lose the 2 additional USB 3 ports. You go back to only the 2 Thunderbolt ports. Not ideal. I mean, if you have 4 ports, it's better than just having 2. Even if you had a dongle or something else behind it to add more ports and stuff, I would go with the 4 ports one. You also lose the Magic Keyboard with Touch ID. Maybe meaningful, maybe not really. It's good to have, and you lose gigabit Ethernet as well. So, and it only comes in 4 different colors. So yeah, you lose the the color choices as well. So I'd rather go with the 1500 if it was my money. The difference isn't that much, and you get a bunch of different features on the $1,500 model that you're not going to be able to add at a later date. Okay, so this is important to consider. All in all, I think this is a good device. It's pretty interesting, again, barring the chin thing and the fact that the bezels on the screen are not that fantastic. I would say probably better value would be the Mac Mini, so if you want to go cheaper, there's that option. You can add an external monitor and land somewhere around $1,000. This thing at $1,500 is actually good value. It's actually good value compared to build your own PC or even buying one. When you add all the peripherals, a webcam, some speakers and stuff like that, you're not going to be far off the mark in terms of the money. The performance is going to be really good. It's also going to be really quiet in comparison to traditional PC, right? Like they said in the presentation, it's 10 decibels at rest, which is pretty impressive. That's like barely audible, if at all. So you're definitely going to have a pretty competitive computer. Now, the usual caveats apply. If you're buying this for gaming, just don't. It's a waste of time and a waste of money. Remember that Apple doesn't support gaming all that much, even if I think they showed someone playing on the Mac on the iMac with a controller. Just don't. I mean, most of the games you're going to be able to play are iOS and iPadOS games, and if you want to play those, just get an iPad. It's as simple as that. Apple is not an ecosystem catering to gamers. The GPU inside this thing is not going to be amazing in terms of power. Remember, it's very good for what it is, which is an integrated graphics card. If you compare it in specs and what it can push out in terms of graphics performance, it's a little bit better than a 1050 Ti, which is like a several years old entry-level dedicated card. So I would not pick this up for gaming in any way, shape, or form. Also, who shouldn't pick this up? If you have a very Windows-specific workflow that depends on a lot of Windows, Microsoft apps that are not available on the Mac, obviously be sure that that those apps in particular and that your workflow can actually work on the Mac. I've read some news recently that the guys from Parallels Desktop, which is a third-party app for the Mac OS, they found a way to make Windows ARM version run on the M1 Macs. That's absolutely fantastic, but I don't know if the ARM version of Windows is as powerful as the full fat one. I've never tested it. Again, if you're very deep into the ecosystem and you run some Windows specific apps that only run on Windows, I'd stay away. But guess what? Other than that, you're fine. This is a great computer. It has decent specs. It's going to have very good performance. I'm certain of that. And it's going to be great for a day-to-day desktop. Yeah, so this one I actually like quite a lot. Second product that we're going to look at, and actually the first major product they announced, is the AirTags, or rather the AirTag. That's how they spell it on the website. Basically, these are little tiny tags that you attach to various items that you possess, or pets, or whatever, like a backpack or a wallet, or you put it on the collar if you're a pet. And using Find My, you are able to find the location of these tags and the items they're attached. So there's some YouTubers who've already gotten early samples and have already reviewed these. They're actually amazing. I like the concept. I like the idea. Big shout out to John Prosser, who leaked them a whole year ago, I think September last year or something like that, including the design. So he had sketches made based on one of his sources, and they look very, very similar to the final product. One thing that surprised me, and kudos to Apple for actually doing this, for once their entire eco-friendly talk is based in reality. So if you asked me, if you bet me money before the event itself, I would have told you there's two options for AirTags, right? In terms of battery. So either one, they'll get an AirPod style battery that will charge wirelessly, and when that battery degrades over time, as it will undoubtedly would, you just throw it away as it's non-replaceable. Tearing the whole thing apart to replace the battery would basically destroy the product. Or option B, even worse, you'd get a battery inside that was built into the device that was non-replaceable at all, and it would just die after a year or something of usage. Apple amazes me here, and they put in a user replaceable battery. It's one of those circular batteries. I think it's CR2032, I think is the correct one. Anyway, the big thing is these are going to be useful in a world that's hopefully going to return to a more normal life in the next couple of months. And the big advantage that Apple has here is they can leverage all of the iOS devices, their entire ecosystem, to help you find these tags, which is like super cool. Apple kind of emphasized the privacy of the whole setup, how the Find My network won't actually be tracking you or your personal information, but it will just track the devices themselves. I think they're pretty neat. I think they're also not terribly priced. You can get one AirTag for $29 or a 4-pack for $99, which is pretty decent value. I think Samsung Smart Tags also retail for about the same money, so pretty cool. But they do have one problem. You see, you can't attach them by default to anything. They're just basically a coin, let's say. So you need to buy a keychain or a loop for them. And on Apple's website, these accessories cost more than the AirTags for some reason. I don't understand that. And there's even a $400+ option made by Hermes or whatever that name is, premium brand. Why would you spend $400 on an accessory for an item that's $29? Okay, I don't know. In short, I'm probably gonna get these at some point this year. I'm interested in them, and they look pretty cool. So last but not least, the iPad Pro, the 2021 generation, last major product they announced. I'm gonna describe this one like I did the iMac. Like their presentation showed, the whole process went something like this. They took a 2020 model of iPad Pro, threw away the internals, stuffed an M1 in it, and called it a day. Oh, and in the 12.9 inch, they also put a fantastic screen on top of it with mini LEDs. That's pretty much it, in just a few words. It has a bunch of stuff, okay, so let's, in a bit more detail. The mini LED in particular looks amazing. It has 1000 nits of brightness, 1600 nits of peak brightness, so that's like incredible for a tablet. The previous models had like something like 500 something around there. So yeah, the screen is amazing. Problem is it's only on the 12.9 inch model. The 11 inch doesn't get it, gets the regular screen from last year. The USB port is now upgraded to a Thunderbolt port, and for an added not so insignificant cost, you can get a 5G connection on it, which kind of makes sense. The problem is, I'm not sure if I really like it. So as of now, which is like the 23rd of April when I'm filming this and I'm going to post this on the channel, I wouldn't recommend you get it if you wanted to be a creative and use it for creative tasks, because the last thing the iPad Pro needed was more power. The iPad Pro was already the most powerful tablet computer out there, and I think the second most powerful is the 2018 model. So in terms of performance, you weren't lacking that much. The problem is these tablets have been held back by iPad OS, which only allows you to run iPad apps, and you can't run Mac OS apps. Now, I think Apple's going to correct that. We have WWDC coming in early June, so I expect them to at least offer a curated list of Mac OS level apps that can run on iPad OS or complete the interconnectivity of these apps. I don't know. But they need to do something, because everybody's going crazy. Oh, you have a 2 terabyte storage option in the iPad Pro. Yeah, but you also get the M1 in its full power configuration with 16 gigabytes of RAM. There are no iPad OS apps that can use 16 gigabytes of RAM that can take advantage of. As iPad OS is built right now, maybe this will help you in, I don't know, loading more apps in the background and not having them reload when you navigate back to them. But that's about it. They showed a couple of scenarios. So one was a movie director using it on the set, and that's kind of reasonable. The second scene they kind of mocked up was someone doing video editing on it, and that scene is it looks amazing at first blush, right? But that's like you're looking at a setup that costs $10,000 with the Pro XDR display included, which they had hooked up to the iPad. Wow, that's really expensive, because if you want to do this, if you want to get the iPad Pro for the video editing stuff, first of all, you're probably not going to go with the 11-inch model. You're going to go for the 12.9-inch model, and that would make most sense. It has the better screen by far. That would be for step one, right? You'd probably get the 256 gigabyte option because you need a little bit more storage, and if you're going to connect an external monitor and an external display to that Thunderbolt port, well, you only have one port, so you can't plug in an external SSD at the same time unless you use a dongle or other stuff. And you get it with 5G, and you buy the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil, and that's like over $2,000 at this point. And it gets even more insane. For instance, if you go for the top line model with 16 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage, and 5G, you get to the eye-watering price of $2,400 just for the iPad. If you add the 350 of the Magic Keyboard on top of that and the Apple Pencil 2nd Gen, you're like at what, 2,800, something like that? With the Pro Display XDR, you're like $9,000 in. And for those professionals right now, even for them, if they have all the money in the world, even for them it's not worth it, because guess what? The MacBooks with the M1 can do the exact same things but better. Okay, so if you're going to use a Pro Display XDR, you're probably fine editing off of M1 Mac Mini at this point, because you're not going to be able to get Final Cut Pro to run on the iPad yet. You're not going to be able to get a bunch of stuff from Adobe. So a lot of the Pro experience is currently negated by the software. Again, this is accurate as of today, the 23rd of April. I'm willing to bet that Apple will address this at WWDC with the new versions of iPad OS. But let's reserve the final judgment until then. I wouldn't jump all over pre-ordering this. Oh, an important fact that I haven't mentioned, both for the iPad and the iMac, they're only going to be delivered in the second half of May. The pre-ordering starts on the 30th of April, I believe, and they're just going to be available basically just before WWDC pretty much. The only ones that are available on short notice or relatively soon will be the AirTags. And that's about it. So if you're planning on getting the iPad Pro or the 24-inch iMac, you still have a little bit of waiting left to do, because, yeah, the global chip shortage affects even Apple. Who would have guessed it? So my final conclusions on the iPad Pro. I'm a bit lukewarm about it. First of all, I wouldn't really consider the 11-inch iPad Pro to begin with. It lacks one of the most important features brought by this generation, which is that beautiful screen with extreme brightness and all the qualities that it brings with it, so I'd skip it. I'd buy the 12.9-inch, but even on that, I reserve judgment right now, because right now, it's only good for basic video editing, like this kind of stuff that I do. I expect very much that Apple will address this at WWDC, like I've already said. A good product overall. I don't get the purpose of it right now. Maybe this whole thing shifts and this whole conversation shifts a bit following the introduction of the new iPad OS. Okay, and finally, there's been some other products and services updated. So there's an update to the podcast app, which now I think offers you the ability to subscribe to creators directly in the app, which is cool. There are some updates, meaningful updates to Apple Card. I don't use it. For me, it's not available. It's only in the US. I don't know about it. I'm not gonna talk about that too much because again, I don't know. I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. The one that I really liked was the purple iPhone 12 and 12 mini. They looked staggering in the presentation. The color looked really vivid and vibrant. Real life color seems to be a little bit watered down, but it still looks really cool. I was really excited to see that. I think it actually looks better than the purple iPhone 11, but maybe that's just me. I'll take a close look when I get to see them in real life. There's also an updated Apple 4K TV now available with the I believe the A12 Bionic chip inside. Again, I've not used an Apple TV. I'm not going to go into details on that one because I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. But it seems to be an updated model that brings some benefits and a redesigned remote. But critically, that redesigned remote also works with an older generation Apple TV if you just want that. Also, without announcing anybody, Apple updated the Mac M1 Mini. It now has the option of 10 gigabit Ethernet. So if you were interested in an M1 Mini and wanted the 10 gigabit Ethernet option back, well, now it's back officially, so you can get that one as well. With all that being said, I thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.